as you know, I have to also be honest, as you said. No time for stories here. Uh, I loved your wine so much that this was what we used to celebrate my wedding, as you know. And because because I come from the whiskey world. I'm a cigar smoker, and so it's always been, and being born in England, we're about our gin, our whiskey. So you can't help it. And then when I did drink champagne, it was the inconsistency of a lot of the champagne in the market was a bit strange. Then it was my first champagne tasting at our cigar and whiskey club here in London. That's when I fell in love with Deutz. So it was a master class. I believe you or someone gave, and I said, I have to come. And I think the questions I asked so much was what led me to Epinay. And 3 trips later, I'm still digging.
Yes.
You know,
Thank you for
and as you know,
mentioning
the
this.
pandemic. Yeah,
Right.
the pandemic came in.
Yes.
You know,
Well, obviously.
but this is interesting. Can you give me more about the composition of the blend of
Yes,
this?
absolutely. So it's mostly a Pinot Noir, and a Pinot Noir from a fair amount of Aï, where we are here in the village of Aï, and we also have Bouzy. I'm sure these names. Well, you are very familiar with those names, but to to the people who would be seeing this, I'm sure if they know the configuration of the Grand Cru in a neighborhood, Bouzy will ring the bell, Ambonnet would ring the bell, Verzy, and that's where we would get this Pinot Noir from. And again, when we organize the blend, remember we crush the grapes September for alcoholic fermentation, malolactic fermentation, and then we have many still wines to choose from. They are all rated, ranked, if you will, and dedicated to possibly the Brut Classique, possibly a Tête de Cuvée, possibly the Rosé. And we will start the blend in January, and that process will last 2 months, 3 months, depending. And we are very slow at reaching the decisions for each and every cuvée, because it's so delicate. It's so, in some instances, if I go back to the Brut Classique we tasted, we have 30 different wines in there. So it's so rosé is more simple, actually, because it's typically 80% Pinot Noir from the villages I just mentioned, and about 20% of Chardonnay. So here again we have this red fruit, as you perfectly described it, with pomegranate and a hint of blackcurrant and blackberry a little bit. In other words, a basket of red fruit is a hint, but it doesn't take away, I guess, the delicacy. It's not too aromatic. We control the aromatics, and by coming back to what I explained about the mixture with this beautiful red wine from Aï here, and we have that balance, harmony, seduction, I believe, and it's something that you would also drink as a beauty. It would be wonderful, like the Brut Classique, as an aperitif, but it can also match or can offer a wonderful pairing. I would need the help of my chef here at Champagne Deutz.
Yeah,
But
I would say lamb.
exactement. That's exactly what I wanted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and duck.
Bravo,
Duck.
bravo.
Yeah,
Well,
because and I say duck because we use a lot of plum sauce for duck.
yes, yes,
And during the Christmas time with turkey, we use a lot of cranberries
of course.
sauce. So that's my
Perfect,
take on
perfect.
it. Yeah,
Yes, yes, yes.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, and
exactly what the chef is doing with, most
yeah,
of the time with this rosé, and also with the rosé vintage, because we will not be tasting the rosé vintage here. This one is, we have these back years. It's non-vintage here, but the chef would exactly organize the combinations and with food that you were just mentioning: duck, lamb, poultry, but white meat maybe not. It's more, yes, perfect. Yes,
and it looks like,
squab.
yeah,
Mm.
exactly. And also, if you're not eating anything, and many of us, I know, the Christmas time, we love our cheese board. This looks very good with the cheese board. You know, you have different cheese, the
Absolutely.
creamy cheese, and yeah, yeah.
Yes. Thank
I
you.
like that.
Yes. Yes.
I like that. And I believe we are going on to something from
Ah,
2012.
from 2012, absolutely.
Yes.
Um, um, it's a new cuvée, Oris. This one
Hmm.
I created with my chef de cave. His name is Michel, and Michel is a very talented chief winemaker. He has been with us more than 20 years. And I was mentioning how close we are to the vineyards. We have our own properties, obviously. We have about 46 hectares that we own and farm. And I also have contracts with 80 different grape growers, almost all of them located in Grand Cru and Premier Cru. Uh, Coming back on our properties, you remember that right behind the winery, the cave, we have several plots of Pinot Noir, uh, and from these plots, we obviously, when we organize the harvest and the picking of the grapes, we would keep the varietal separate. We would keep the terroir separate. So from our properties and from the fruit we buy from the grape growers, we have, after the fermentations, we have about 150 different wines to choose from. Over the 26 years I've been, I've had my hands on winemaking and blending, more important, blending at Champagne Deutz. Those two plots that are behind the winery, called La Côte Glaciaire and Meurthe, and this is the Meurthe. The fruit was absolutely always exquisite. And in 2010, that gave me the idea to come up with this single varietal / single vineyard type of wine. And without obviously taking the fruit and doing this homage to Monsieur William Deutz, that would be detrimental. By taking this crème de la crème of the Pinot, that would be detrimental to the other cuvées. We wouldn't do this. But we had some fruit, we have some fruit to use and to bottle with precisely from this only vineyard, its only plot, and taking a part of this and bottle and create this new cuvée for the first time with vintage 2010 and Meurthe 2012. I have to clarify this. The two plots in 2010 were mixed. So it was single varietal, but from the two plots. In 2012, we kept the two plots separate and we bottled two different wines. And it's extraordinary, Oris, the configuration of our properties here. Côte Glaciaire is behind the winery. It's touching, is adjacent to the winery. It's facing south, and it receives a lot of sun. It's beautiful, and I will talk. I will say a few words about climate change, actually, because that's could be it could be very interesting.
No, it is. It is. It is.
And so that's facing south, touching the winery, and on it's 130 yards, if you will, from this one. We have the Meurthe that we are tasting now, which is slightly facing east, where the fruit, the Pinot Noir grown on this chalky subsoil, has the purity which is just a second to none. At the same time, we have all the ingredients, so to speak, or the parameters to have a very ripe, when Mother Nature is good, and climate change has an impact. So we decided that this wine could stand on its own and offer something different. So climate change, Oris, because this wine was going in a different cuvées that we have. It's a Grand Cru, and remember also, we only use first press at Champagne Deutz. First press only, and that applies to the Brut Classique as well. The grapes in our non-vintage or multi-vintage are originating for close to 80% from Grand Cru and Premier Cru, but more important is that we use first press only. I really insist on that because, at the end of the day, if you have the reference to Grand Cru on a bottle of champagne, which is a good sign, but what do you think could be best? Is it the second press of a Grand Cru or the first press of a non-Grand Cru? Well, in some instances, I would go for the first press of a non-Grand Cru.
Yes.
So,
the best.
Yeah.
The best.
Exactly. First, yes, the best part of the juice. Anyway, climate change.
It's yeah. Before you go into climate change, I like the fact that you guys do not rush your champagne. You take your time.
Oh yes.
You bide your time. And can I say that is one of your greatest asset and secret?
Indeed.
Patience?
I would have mentioned, thank you for asking the question, as the politicians would say on TV. But no, it's a very, very important point. Time doesn't count, actually, and time is needed. When you have the best ingredients, you've got the talents, and God knows I have the talents around me, the chief winemaker, his assistant, another person. But time also is needed to fine tune what we have assembled. What we have created. We need time. Regulations in champagne say vintage dated champagne cannot be released before 3 years from harvest time. Vintage dated. At Deutz, well, this is 2012. And on the Tête de Cuvées, we are still on 2010 or so. It's a good 10 years. Not always, but, so time, even on the non-vintage, which is 18 months at Deutz, if we average out with, remember the back years that we use for the consistency of the blend, we have an average of more than 3 years. So
yes.
hence,
Even though, I know you just said something for the audience, because this is another, I like to consider this a masterclass, you said something, the back years. So even though this is 2012, can you give us the back years before the 2012? Yeah. They don't know that.
No.
Yeah.
Well, no. Obviously, vintage data this shows that it's coming only from that year. Obviously, I was mentioning the back years for the non-vintage. Obviously, well, declaring a vintage and saying a vintage on this and having a blender, I would be arrested. So, no, regulations are very strict. No, what I was trying to explain, and going back to the fruit and the climate change and everything. I apologize; it's a bit of everything in what I'm saying. But climate change, Oris, has been a major, has had a real impact. Actually, we over the last 15 years, we have gained on the average. So average, I repeat. So we still have this ups and downs, obviously, but we have gained 1.5 Celsius average temperature, and that has an impact on the fruit. And so far, it has been highly, I repeat, highly beneficial to Champagne as a whole. So and as a consequence, well, to make a long story short, that's why we could come up with this single vineyard and single varietal that didn't have to be blended to reflect all of its personality or bring something to the, by using the blend with some other terroirs. So it's a wonderful wine, and it has been beneficial. So that's not only it was in my tasting notes, but it's also a constant observation. Our team of viticulturists would have about viticultural practices, not only to be friendly to the environment. Obviously, all our vineyards are certified sustainable viticulture. That's very important. No pesticide, no herbicides, no nothing in the vineyard. And we obviously have embarked on a very serious program so that all of our suppliers in grapes, all these grape growers from the neighborhood, actually this very morning they are here in our cellars, and we have not a master class. We are not teachers, but we want to convince them about the virtues of sustainable viticulture. They are almost all of them will be certified in the next 2 years. So that's a very important.
Wow.
Point.
And that's great. That's great and good news, especially now that we are using gearing towards more electric cars,
Absolutely.
technology. And I like the fact that you talked about pesticides and a lot of these things, because it's very important that we pay attention to climate change. It's not some sort of made up story. It's real. Yeah. And it's nice to hear that. And it actually, like you said, it works for the benefit of a lot of us in the champagne world, in the wine and the whiskey world, because it takes us back to that to the beginning of patientness and respect for the environment, not to be too quick to pump out 1 million bottles, 5 million bottles, or to squeeze unnecessary amount of, you understand. And that's good news for me and us and our generation and our children, grandchildren to come. That's good
Oh,
news.
it's and Deutz has before being a chairman and CEO of Deutz, I was sitting at the board of directors when the
Yes.
family the past owners decided to sell in '93. And even in '93, I was hearing the CEO of and the owner of Champagne Deutz saying, I was intrigued about environment. That was '93. That's almost 30 years ago, and I was asking that sort of question. I would remember his answer, and actually, I'm using it still because it was a very nice answer to that question about the environment. He said, Fabrice, in the vineyards of Deutz, you would always have seen ladybugs. And I was, seeing ladybugs in the vineyard. I was just testifying that the approach to the environment was already there. So So it's part of the DNA and a part of the philosophy of Champagne. It has always been, actually.
Wow. We need to taste this. I need to taste
Yes,
this.
absolument,
Mm.
absolument.
Mm.
Where's my?
Mm.
So
Mm.
the color, as you can see, is
I like this.
darker, golden, very golden. The aromas is that of
Mm.
very ripe fruit. It's a lot of fruit, flour,
Yeah.
but there is
Apricots.
always a touch, apricots, and there is a touch, and we can see that what we call the secondary aromas
Yes.
will be in that wine, before too long. And
Mm.
secondary, it starts all with apricot, and then you
Mm-hmm.
will have a touch of almonds and roasted almonds.
Bigaroo. Mm. Bigaroo cherries. Mm.
Absolument, absolument,
Mm-hmm.
very ripe Bigarro cherries,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and yeah, and it's and obviously the mouth feel is definitely there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you can chew the wine, but it really fills your palate, and honestly, 1 year only. It's vintage dated. One grape only. It's Pinot Noir, but you have a complexity, and at the same time you have the purity of the fruit. This chalky soil here that we have in our vineyards. There is that thick of earth, and then underneath is chalk. And we have 600 meters of chalk, and the roots of the vines would go deep. So actually, the vineyards would rarely suffer from water stress. Even this year, 2022 was very dry, very hot, but the vine didn't suffer from water stress because the roots in the chalky subsoil it's like a sponge, if you will. There is always some humidity. So anyway, but this chalky soil, at the end of the day, is relatively neutral in terms of a terroir. So we get the quintessence, really, from these two plots. We have the quintessence of the Pinot Noir, and that's being reflected in the wine here, I believe.
Wow, this is beautiful. This is amazing. You know, one of the most beautiful thing about visiting the Champagne region is being able, as an outsider, to have access to the region of Champagne. Um, Anyone watching this, I would really beg you to visit the Champagne region. Um, it's more than just drinking champagne. You will see people like Deutz even teaming up with the scientific world and finding ways to make us the next generation of champagne drinkers, my kids, my great grandkids, to want to be involved in it, because it's an education. For me, it's an education. It's beyond. As much as I go there, I like to say I actually drink less champagne and I study more from people like you. It's an education when I go there, because I like to consider myself a champagne practitioner. Even though a practitioner with learners. As you know, I smoke cigars. I love my cigar. I collect cigars. Now I'm collecting champagne and whiskey, but I'm constantly learning. Learning more, learning more, entertaining my friends more with it. So this is amazing. Talk about. Can you? I need you to elaborate more on your composition of the blend for this one, this particular one.
Well,
Um, and what
well,
was that process like?
uh, in that wine, specific wine, homage, as I said, it's 1 year, it's vintage
Mhm.
dated. It's only one
Mhm.
plot, one varietal. So there is no
Wow.
blend at all. as opposed to the vast majority of champagne, which is obviously where blend is the key word. You're right. It's but in that one, it's easy. If nature is good, if the fruit is good, we decide it's a small production. It's 5 to 6,000 bottles, so it's not much for the world. That is, it's not much. But the blend here is almost zero. We have just to make sure that it meets our expectations in terms of what you said, in terms of aromatics, in terms of mouthfeel, in terms of harmony. Again, I've mentioned that several times, but we insist. Wine to me, and wine in general, actually, and you have out there millions of different wine. There's a plethora of wine on this planet, and I'm very eclectic. I was born in Champagne, but I'm very eclectic. I've been a member of the board of directors of several wineries, including, and I'm still a CEO of a Rhone Valley winery, actually, called Delas. And so, anyway, but I like wine to have harmony and elegance, and champagne has to epitomize this elegance and subtlety and nobility. If we
Yes,
so
absolutely.
that's
And also, and talking about food and wine pairing,
oh
for those of you who really, really love sushi, I'm a big sushi fan, and I love tuna a lot. This is very good with tuna steaks, cooked or raw, I believe. Do you agree with me?
to my
And poultry. Yeah,
yeah, poultry definitely.
yeah.
Uh, Tuna, I would have it cooked personally, rather than tuna. We might be talking about tuna when we go to the Amour de Deutz and the Chardonnay only. But for this one, probably tuna, but cooked to me. And given the evolution or the additional complexity of this, it's the wine is 10 years old now, so it shows that complexity that comes with automatically with the aging process. Why not a dessert? I mean, apple tart, but not too sugary. Not too much sugar, but um, for dessert, in the old days, champagne was a bottle of champagne was open for dessert, which in the past was probably not a good thing to do because it was very brute, and that was conflicting with obviously the sweetness of the desserts. But so that's why we have these demi-secs and that sort of things. But here, if it's not too sweet, I would this cooked apple, and you would have also some a touch of it in the spectrum of aromas here. So,
I
but
like
I
that.
agree with you. Cooked tuna, I like that.
Yeah,
I'll talk to the chef.
cook tuna.
I'll talk to the
Absolutely,
chef.
absolutely. I know most chefs will hang me for that. um, so we are moving on to
to yeah,
fourth.
fourth,
Wow.
and the
Yay.
other two we have, Oris, are what we
Yeah.
call the prestige cuvée or tête de cuvées.
So this is
Well,
the William Deutz 2008.
correct. Correct. William Deutz is one of the two têtes de cuvées we have at
Okay.
Champagne Deutz. This one is named after the founder. The previous one was
Okay.
a homage to the founder, homage to William Deutz, and this one is a tête de cuvée that was born, so to speak. First vintage was 1601, and we have two têtes de cuvées, and actually Champagne Deutz is the only company to have two têtes de cuvées. This one is on the traditional blend of Pinot and Chardonnay. And the one we'll have after the Amour is strictly Chardonnay. So The William Deutz. Well, what can I say? It's obviously a small production. It's something, remember when I was mentioning the fruit coming from our estates, coming from these 80 grape growers who deliver their grapes to us. We have about 150 wines to choose from when we organize the blends. We rank, we give a note and a ranking, if you will, to the different wines, and we would allocate possibly to William Deutz, to Homage, and then we start the blending process. And for William Deutz, we have typically 55 to 60% Pinot Noir, 35% of Chardonnay, and the balance would be Pinot Meunier. Nothing is written in stone, obviously, because any given harvest or crop is different from the previous one, so nothing is written in stone. But we would obviously use what has been put aside as being among the finest batches of these 150 still wines we have after fermentation and before blending.
So give me a step-by-step composition of the blend of this. And I see you talked about Pinot Noir, you talked about Chardonnay, you talked about Pinot Meunier.
Correct.
So I guess each one of these have a certain percentage.
Yes, exactly.
In the blend composition.
Typically, again, it varies different according to the vintage, as I said. But it's typically on the William Deutz, 55 to 60% Pinot Noir, 30 to 35% Chardonnay, and the balance is Pinot Meunier. So we have something that is predominantly Pinot. Hence, more structure and by choosing the very best from the different terroirs of Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, and Chardonnay, you have a real presence, a complexity, and right off the bat, on the nose, you would feel that complexity.
I see there's a lot of yellow fruits in here. So you got plums, peaches, pears.
Peaches, and maybe a touch of this, I would say, preserved citrus, and that it still exhibits some. There is a connotation of flowers still, dry flowers, and so it's a very rich, complex, but still, I believe, delicate. That sounds like a contradiction, but it's not. There is something that is still elegant in that complexity, in that richness. There is still something that reflects what we are trying to do at Champagne Deutz all across the range of wines, of cuvées we produce, which is, again, harmony and elegance.
Yes. I like the harmony and elegance because they all blend together without interfering with your palate.
Absolutely.
And they blend it very respectfully. I would like to.
That's the idea. That's the idea.
Wow, this is definitely
as you
again. This is lobster. This is lobster friendly, fish friendly.
Fish friendly. Well, you can go absolutely. You cannot go wrong with that. But you can also organize pairings with meat. Definitely.
I notice a lot of your champagne blends very well with a lot of healthy meals, and I know you French are very healthy eaters.
Yes.
I have never. You French are very healthy eaters, so I see why champagne, of course, Deutz is very attractive to me. Because I work out, as you know, I run 3 to 4 miles every day. My wife, we're very healthy people. Our kids, we try our best to make sure they don't see certain things in this house, and it really blends with that lifestyle. I never go to bed and wake up with a headache with Boots. I wake up actually feeling good, ready to go.
That
You
sounds
understand?
like a huge compliment.
Yeah. For me, it's very every when I go to when I visit you guys, I always come back ready to go. And a lot of my friends actually around me who are great cigar smokers. Um, and again, this is out of the passion of my heart. They feel very comfortable with this with Deutz because they say, Oris, we wake up very light. I can function the next day after a cigar and Deutz. I know one of the favorite Deutz for most of my friends in the cigar community. I won't say it's actually the last one, but we will. I know we need to continue with this before that. But the last Deutz for a lot of my cigar smokers and those who have been asking me, what is a good complementary cigar? What's a good complementary what's a good complementary champagne to a cigar, you will find out on our last if you stay with us, and it's very, as I said, it's a very healthy drinking. And you hear Fabrice talks about climate change. I think that's very, very important, and you will see why, because the one thing I can say about the French, they are very practical. They are very healthy. Um, this is about, again, this is about the Deutz, the House of Deutz. So I will like to stick with the House of Deutz as an homage to the House of Deutz. You can call me a love child of the House of Deutz because every time I go to the Champagne region, to Epinay, I am constantly being taught. It's like they bring out this. It's like always I'm sitting with professors, and I humble myself as a practitioner of champagne and listen, and just and it's more than just the champagne. It's more than just drinking the champagne. And I realize why people drink champagne. I do realize, and hopefully you will by the end of this show. So yes, back to you, sir.